If you're like me, you've recently played Deltarune Chapter 2. And if you aren't like me, what are you like? Do you enjoy Nerd's Rope? I enjoy Nerd's Rope, occasionally. Anyway, similar to Chapter 1, Deltarune Chapter 2 has another crazy hidden boss. People love Chapter 1's Jevil, but everyone including myself seems a bit more smitten with the incredibly creepy yet lovable Spamton G. Spamton. This video is to kind of get to the bottom of why that is. I think for most people it's incredibly easy to tell why Spamton is probably more well-liked than Jevil. Now this isn't to say that Jevil is a bad character or not liked at all or anything like that. I like Jevil, I just think that overall Spamton is better. He's probably my favorite part of Chapter 2, next to Taskmaster and her juicy thighs. And hands. She doesn't have arms, but she has hands. And you know what that means. We can hold hands while I rub her thighs. Anyway, Spamton's introduction. So Jevil is truly a secret boss. He's not very hard to find, but he is hidden, and he doesn't really have much of an introduction outside of his boss area. Spamton, on the other hand, literally jumps out of a fucking dumpster and just starts shouting at Chris about deals and living in a dumpster. A pretty boisterous introduction, if I do say so myself. I can only theorize as to why Toby decided to have a more outright introduction to the secret boss of Chapter 2, but my main guess is that, based on the way Spamton's little side story plays out, they're probably going to be somewhat more important in the overall unraveling of the story of Deltarune. This moves into my second point, which is Spamton's big fat plot. And no, I'm not talking about his butt. Spamton has a far more interesting story than Jevil. Their stories are very similar, with the difference being in how it plays out. After getting the keys you need to unlock the door to Jevil's room, you fight Jevil, you beat him, and then you can talk to Seam, who will tell you Jevil's story, which is relatively straightforward. He was a clown, and he was already kind of crazy, and then the knight or whoever shows up and makes him crazier, and then he's like, oh, this isn't reality, I'm the only one who sees the truth, and he's scary, crazy clown. There are, of course, interesting tidbits that he might have more purpose in his insanity with an allusion to the futility of your actions and the end of the world. But I think this actually works to make Seam a more interesting character than Jevil himself, at least characterization-wise, because Seam is the one telling you all of this and he's giving his opinion on it. Spamton's story, on the other hand, is a bit more involved, even having multiple areas in the game dedicated to him instead of just one boss room. After his explosive and trasherific entrance, he says a bunch of things about Chris, which are actually about himself, and then immediately battles Chris. I'm talking about him living in a dumpster and stuff like that. Chris obviously doesn't live in a dumpster. I mean, I guess that's subjective. Chris's house looks very nice to me. Anyway, I'm not going to spell out the entire story of Spamton. I'm just going to try to give it to you really quick, but spoilers ahead anyway. If you want to experience the tale of Spamton and the fun of Deltarune yourself, you should play the game. This is a YouTube video. Spamton's segment in Chapter 2 is really involved. After beating him in the initial silly fight in front of his, I guess, vacation dumpster, you find him later in his bigger trash house. This whole segment is really creepy to me, as I said in the intro, and gives you some insight into Spamton as a character. His lack of friends, his goal to get into the mansion, as well as the fact that there might be some part of him deep down inside who still wants help, who wants to get out, who isn't insane. He has all these scary mannerisms with his jaw glitching out and sliding to the side. His menus are constantly changing. When you buy some of the items from him, it's literally just poison. It's really creepy, and it's a really cool segment. It's really different from the first introduction to him, where he's just kind of silly, and you're like, oh, he's this cute little funny guy who's talking about deals, and then you see him in the shop, and it's playing this music, and the phone's in the background. It's just creepy. Eventually, after you leave the shop, you find Mettaton's robot, you get a disc, and you load Spamton into the disc, and you put him back into the robot. He wants this done because he believes it can free him. That's the thing, Spamton is pretty sure that he is like a puppet on strings, and he's not in control of his own fate. But it doesn't work. He's still hung up on both metaphorical and literal strings. I guess the metaphorical strings being the ones in his mind, or the ones that whatever is causing the Darkners to literally be alive but toys or whatever. Spamton seems to want Chris's soul, thinking it'll be something that will help him get free, which is ironic, because as the game likes to imply, Chris is only really free to do what he wants when his soul is out of him, because otherwise we technically control him. But I guess his soul does still make him powerful. Video games. Not making sense, since Pong. He references heaven, possibly talking about us, the players, or even Toby Fox, and when you eventually beat him, the game kind of tricks you with this happy music, and he's going to be cut loose and be free, and for just a second, you feel kind of happy for Spamton. It seems like his insanity's gone, he's happy, he's about to free, he even calls out to his mom, and then the last cord is cut, and he falls, and he's dead. Okay, you know, not dead, but he's defeated, and it's still really sad. And I guess we beat the insanity out of him because he realizes the futility of living, and then turns himself into some talking glasses. Pretty cool, Spamton. Big ups. Then if you go talk to Swatch, he mentions the machine was made by a Lightner. Of course, there's the implication that it was probably made by Mettaton. Then if you go all the way back to Trash Town, you see a lineup of creepy, wall-facing Addisons, Blair Witch style, who tell you Spamton's backstory, basically. Spamton was an unsuccessful but nice enough salesman who suddenly got help from a mysterious benefactor who would give him constant calls and then became very successful. Then the calls stopped coming, and Spamton's entire life fell apart. He lost his success, he lost his room in Queen's Mansion. At the end of his rope, believing that everything was like, he was going to lose everything, he got one last call, and apparently this is the one that just pushed him over the edge. This drove him nuts. One of the Addisons who'd come to check on him found the phone off the hook and thought they could hear someone talking on the other line, but when they put the receiver to their ear, all they could hear was garbage noise. And I think you and me both know what garbage noise is. It's that weird, spooky, Tragic, right? It really is. You feel for Spamton as you get through this, and honestly, I found the part where you beat him kind of heartbreaking. He genuinely seems happy to think that you freed him and that you and your friends are going to be friends with him once he is free. But it's also really cool, as well as tragic. The creepiness of it, the Addisons facing the wall explaining the backstory, it's all really well thought out, and I enjoy it a lot. You really go through a gambit of emotions with Spamton. First you think he's kind of funny and he's silly, look at this little deals guy, and then you get to his shop and you're like, this is really ominous, and he's creepy, and his jaw's sliding to the side, and he's scary. And then in the final boss fight, you think he's kind of epic. Oh, this is kind of hard, and he's kind of hot, he's sexy, he's hot. Just kidding, no, I'm not. But I am kidding, he's not hot, or am I? And then he makes you sad, and his backstory is pretty interesting when you get it laid out for you. It's simple, but it's interesting. And it's far more detailed than Jevil's. He's driven to insanity by some force that lifted him to the top, then let him fall to the bottom, and then finally kicked him over the edge. Who would do such a horrible thing, you might ask? Probably Gaster, or whoever it is, you know, the Roaring Knight or whatever, but that's not what this video is about, so yeah. Spamton's fight, presentation, and music. So the story section was kind of long, but there's a bit more to say anyway. I think in general, Spamton's presentation is just fantastic overall, and a great build on what was established with Jevil in Chapter 1. Not only is he introduced in the main story to let you know how to find him, but he also has his own deeper lore, his own conversations, his own kind of shop. You have to do things for him. And I guess you have to with the keys in Jevil with Part 1, but you actually have to interact with him to do the things that you want with him. Not only that, but he has like 2 unique boss fights. The first one where you meet him and it's him and he's just spammed him, and then the second one that's kind of a parody of Mettaton's fight from Undertale. You get that with this whole mix of computer spam, ad, and the puppet aesthetic, which works really well. He technically has 7 different pieces of music in the game as well.
I can't do anything.
The way he moves in his suit hanging from the vines is almost mesmerizing. All of this seems very purposeful, I'm sure, character design and all that. His defeat is also much more powerful than Jevil's. I just think his presentation in the game and implementation into the world is fantastic. I'm adding this in after the fact because I forgot to write it into my script. In the alternate playthrough, the alternate pathway that you can take in the story, Spamton also has a important part in it. He actually becomes the final boss that you fight in the alternate playthrough. I wouldn't say that it's super important. It changes a few things, but it's basically a shorter playthrough than the main one. And in addition to that, you don't really get much more from Spamton besides he basically becomes more evil in that playthrough, and he doesn't get like that kind of redemption that he does at the end of the main one. But yeah, I just wanted to say that. So yeah, bye. Ooh, Spamton and the future of characters like this in Deltarune. Now, I don't know exactly what to call characters like Spamton and Jevil. They're basically Darkeners who seem to have guessed at the truth of their situation, that maybe they're toys or some manifestation of something that the Lighteners bring, you know, that they might not even truly be real. I might make another longer video on this. I have a couple of more things I want to say on Deltarune, but that's not what this video is about, really. But my guess is that the Darkeners only exist, and that they're kind of being projected by a Lightener in the darkness. That's just a vague way to put it. It's hard to go into without really getting in depth about it. Of course, this reality drives them crazy, and seemingly their insanity gives them power. There's hints from Seam and even Spamton himself that the next boss is going to be even harder, even greater, difficult, and more chilling. I look forward to it and wonder who it'll be. Spamton isn't necessary to complete Chapter 2. You don't have to beat Spamton to beat Chapter 2. But in a way, he almost feels like a necessary part of the story and the puzzle of the game. Like, I almost wonder if one of these side bosses is eventually not going to be a side boss and it'll just be the main boss of the chapter. We'll see. In conclusion, I think Spamton is really cool, just better set up than Jevil. I still like Jevil, but I think Spamton has a lot more effort put into him, a lot more care in his segment and inclusion in Chapter 2. He's an integral part of Chapter 2, whereas Jevil is really is just kind of a secret boss. I do think Jevil is important, but he's definitely not as included in everything as Spamton is. I think these kind of insane side bosses will definitely be more important to the game and the story as time goes on. It's funny because to me, it almost seems like Toby might have changed the game up a little bit because he saw the reaction to Jevil in Part 1. I have no proof, but people really loved Jevil, and then in Chapter 2, suddenly he includes the Shadow Crystals and the Shadow Mantle, the thing that you're going to need in the future, and Spamton is way more included in the second part. He's got all this dialogue and stuff like that. It feels like he picked up on the fan love and just made it bigger. I have no proof of that, of course, but I want to think positively of Toby Fox, and it just feels like he saw the fans' reaction to Jevil, and he was like, oh, you really liked Jevil, huh? Well, do you want more of characters like that? Because I'm going to give you more of characters like that, and you're going to fucking like it. Eat your dinner. Eat your Spamton. I hope you enjoyed the video. I'm going to try to release more videos soon. I've got some Halloween stuff that I'm hoping to get out soon. It's 11 days till Halloween, and I'm editing and recording this now. But I hope you did enjoy it. It's going to be some Halloween videos, and then I'm going to do some videos on Cowboy Bebop because the live-action show is coming out soon. So anyway, thanks for watching. I'm Ghosts on Holiday, and watch out for bears. They're, you know, they're cute, but they're dangerous. So watch out for them. Especially ghost bears since it's Halloween. Alright, see ya!